Greetings, adventurers. This is Lauren, your guild advisor, and welcome back to DanMachi Season 3 Cut Content and Review for Episode 7. If you've been keeping up with the channel, earlier in the week I made a post explaining that I wasn't going to cover the latest DanMemo news, the DanMachi mobile game, because I was feeling under the weather, and that escalated into me calling off work on Wednesday because I felt just out of it, a headache, fever. Then I find out the next day that two other people were just sick from work, and one of them actually tested positive for COVID. So I don't think I have it. I got tested today to make sure. I don't think I have it because my sister had it earlier, last month, and I somehow managed to not get it that entire time. And it's been quite a while past her quarantine date since this happened, so I don't know what's up. But my throat probably doesn't sound normal if you've heard me before, but I'll try to get through this. I'm still kind of feeling under the weather, but I'm a lot better than before, though I do get a slight headache every now and then. But for now, I'll be able to do this episode for you guys. So here we are, the actual turning point of the season, where the episode leaves off at that very heavy, intense moment, and we'll start the episode just stating that we're not done with Volume 10 quite yet. There's about an episode worth of material left to go. It covered pages 159 through 222 of the English physical novel, like you see right here, and we have 73 pages left to go. So that pretty much means that episode 8 will be the conclusion of Volume 10, and then episodes 9 through 12, which is only 4 episodes, will cover all of Volume 11, which is longer than the other 2 novels we covered. So I don't know how that's going to work, but anyway, let's get started with the actual episode. So as you can probably imagine, these opening fighting bits between Dix and Belle, as Dix is explaining who he is, what the curse is, and taunting Belle, and all the while, some of those fighting bits are longer in the actual novel. For example, at one point during the fight, Belle kind of harkens back to his training with eyes in Season 2, where he employs that tactic he used in the war game, where he makes himself extremely vulnerable, and then Dix takes the opening. And this is actually after Dix manages to knock away one of Belle's knives, that red one you see in the anime, which is Ushiwakimaru. And the weird thing about this particular knife, in previous videos I've explained that during Season 2, Belle's Hestia knife was used as collateral in exchange for Lily's freedom from Soma Familia during the wargame arc, and that's when Welf gives him Ushiwakimaru Nishiki, which is another red knife very similar to Belle's original Ushiwakimaru, and it's made from the other half of the Minotaur horn that was not used by Welf when he initially made the first Ushiwakimaru. So as of Season 2, Belle is supposed to have 2 of those red knives, but of course that never happened in the anime. So I'm not actually sure which of those knives got knocked away in this episode, because they never really covered Belle getting another Ushiwakimaru knife. So we'll just assume that this is the only knife that he's had, and that got knocked away. But anyway, in the light novel, again, Belle kind of tricks Dix into thinking that he's vulnerable. Dix swoops in with a strike, and then Belle reaches from behind him and then grabs the original Ushiwakimaru and then tilts it back up and deflects Dix's strike. And after that, Belle tries to go in and take advantage of the opening he just created, but then Dix takes out a knife of his own. And you see it later on in the episode, but this is when Dix actually takes out his own knife, and then Belle realizes that he can't match Dix in fighting prowess, because even though Dix might have lowered his status to use the curse, Belle still is really no match for Dix, because he is way more experienced than Belle as a fighter. And this is one of the things I like about the writing in DanMachi. It's obvious that Belle can level up faster than other people because of his Liara's Freze skill, but even though he's leveling up super fast and getting these stats, it does not change the amount of actual fighting experience he has. He's only been an adventurer for a few months, as opposed to Dix, who's been fighting for a long time, so of course he's able to outmatch Belle when it comes to actual tactics with fighting. And also regarding Dix's cursed weapon, that spear of his, where any cuts it makes will just keep on bleeding even if you try to apply normal healing items in magic. And I say normal because you see Fells the Sage heal that off of Belle at the very end of the episode. In the light novel, when Dix explains how this curse works to Belle, Bell actually links the cursed weapon to injuries he saw on a monster earlier in Volume 8. And this is content that was skipped that I mentioned in that Before You Watch Season 3 video. In this Seer side story, where Bell visits the orphanage along Daedalus Street, where Seer helps with the kids, and they find this hidden passage, a hidden tunnelway, which reveals this monster, this wounded barbarian, and that's where those wounds come from. Dix admits it in the light novel, like, yep, that was me. Thanks for taking care of that, Bell, because that tunnel was collapsed, so they couldn't get to the barbarian to finish it off. So Dix, like, kind of thanks Bell mockingly, saying, thank you for taking care of that one for us. And this is not the reason why I like the writing in DanMachi so much, is because a lot of these elements that are used later on are planted earlier in the material. Like, the world building is phenomenal in the novels, and if you guys ever get a chance to actually read them, I highly encourage you to do so. And just some background with the fighting that Fells is involved in against the hunters of Iglis Familia. He's using these gloves to make these shock waves, and they're called magic eaters. And with those, he's able to knock people back with those shock waves without doing a long chant. At one point, Fells actually stops the blade of his sword with his palm, tosses it aside, and then just plants his palm into a person's stomach, and then does the shockwave, and oof, that's gotta hurt. And by the way, Fells is level 4. He can't go beyond that anymore because it's kind of hard to apply the blessing to Fells when there's no flesh on his back. And Gran, who's pretty much like the second in command when it comes to Iglis Familia, the ball guy, he's also level 4, so he does pose some kind of a threat to Fells during the fighting that's happening in this episode. And that one bit in last episode I was talking about before, when Fells gives a Daedalus Eye key to Let randomly in the anime episode and doesn't really explain what to do with it, like Let just takes off. The actual context for that is like a much longer conversation that happens between Fells and Let. So what happened is that Fells is telling both Let and Fia, who the injured harpy from before, that they need to gather the rest of the Xenos and get back to this location. And he doesn't even care if they also bring in Ganesha Familia, because Fells would rather risk like more people knowing about the Xenos than them possibly being wiped out right here, right now, as they're still, most of them, all being in this frenzy. So that's what Fells sends Let out to do, is to get the rest of the Xenos and bring them back. And the weird part to this episode is that you never see Let, like even though Ray and the other Xenos come back in, you don't see where Let is. And unlike what happens last episode with Let just going by himself, Fia actually flies Let back out. So really weird stuff happening. They kept Let leaving with the key, but they don't bring him back later on in this episode. Now, one thing I found humorous is that they kept in the Monica gag with no one knowing what his actual name is among Ganesha Familia in this episode, because that line wasn't in the light novel. And then, man, they really went crazy, just showing like how bodied Shakti got against that big bull like Xenos in this episode. The unfortunate thing about this is that they like cut a lot of the fight that happens with this Xenos and then skip straight to the point where Ryu is soloing against it. And like I said last episode, I really hate it when they like take out scenes and then say, well, it's okay because we put them in the mobile game. And guess what they did this time? They took that scene with the initial fight between that bull Xenos and the rest of Ganesha Familia and Aisha and Osfi, and then put that into the mobile game, DanMachi Memoria Freze. You can watch the quick little side story event on Mediocre's channel. I'll link that in the description, or you can actually play the game for yourself. But this continues to annoy me. It almost makes me wonder if like this was part of the anime production team's like thought process. It's like, well, we don't need to adapt this because the mobile game got us covered. And I'm just thinking that really shouldn't be the way it works, because again, anime needs to stand out on its own. If there are scenes that need to be adapted to understand the context of the episodes in full, then maybe you should give, I don't know, the anime more episodes to do it with. Anyway, again, Ryu is my favorite character, and I would say this scene's really cool, but I know what the full scene is, so I can't really say this scene's cool, because this fight lasted a lot longer. And first of all, like, the bull is like walking towards Ryu and the rest of the people, and Ryu kind of like steps up and then has this serious gaze on her face and then readies her weapon, almost like she's ready to do like a duel. And the monster Xenos actually stops and notices that, and then also like acts like they're gonna take part in a duel. Like they stop, see Ryu's gaze, and also raise their weapon, and that's when they start fighting. And because of Ryu's previous experience seeing how Aisha and Osvi fell from this monster, Ryu realizes that she can't like actually block the attacks head on with her weapon, so she makes every effort she can to just dodge every blow, and then she attacks the monster relentlessly. And because of one of her special skills, the faster she attacks, the more intense her attacks actually are, so each strike gets stronger and stronger. And while she's fighting the monster, she notices the monster is like smiling, like it's excited by this fighting. And that's like Ryu's really interested, because she makes the observation that maybe the monster isn't there to massacre them, but actually just fight them. It's enjoying the fighting. And then that final blow that is actually animated is Ryu tricks the monster into slashing down so she can actually attack it from above. And when this happens, she kind of like uses her wooden sword as a decoy, and she takes out her two short swords. And of course in the anime that doesn't happen. She just attacks with her wooden sword, and then the bull Xenos is able to get Ryu with its horn and then basically defeat her. And just before, like, he actually hasn't killed anyone yet at all, and he's about to do like the finishing blow on Ryu. When I initially read this, I'm like, wait, no, this is not how you kill my favorite character. Thankfully, that's not what happens, because one of the Xenos calls out to this bull Xenos to obviously try and group up with the rest of them. So this brings us to the moment where Dix decides to show Bell like the true nature of monsters. And the weird thing about this is that in the anime, Dix like kind of kicks Bell and then says, "Follow me!" And then Bell like obediently follows after him, just walking after Dix. Now in the light novel, Dix kicks Bell, and Bell is exhausted, so it takes a while for him to get back up. And by the time he does get back up, Dix has already like disappeared into the tunnelway, and Bell has to run after him. And it's more than just like one straight tunnel, like there's tons of forks, but Bell like sees one small magic lamp, and then he actually hears Wine cry out for him. So instead of Bell like just following after Dix, Bell chases after him, and then he hears Wine call out to him. Though I am happy they actually kept Bell like trying to run at Wine when Dix is trying to actually take the jewel out of her forehead. With the way some of the past episodes have been directed, I almost expected them to just leave Bell standing there and watch Dix take the jewel out. So I'm happy they actually kept the part where Bell is running at Wine and trying to prevent it from happening, because that stuff just annoys the heck out of me. And I'm actually very pleased with how they animated the whole transformation of Wine turning into this more monstrous form. Like her legs are coming together, becoming like that snake-like tail that is expected of a normal weaver in the first place. Now as for the scenes with Bell like getting constantly knocked down and then trying to close the distance between himself and Wine, I was like slightly annoyed he didn't say anything during that entire time until he got clawed by her, because originally Bell does manage to like call out Wine's name like very weakly, but I did think it was a little strange that he didn't say like anything in the anime until that point when, of course, Wine claws him on the shoulder. And I love how they did keep Bell like holding on to her hand. And the thing that continues to bother me again is they cut out yet another hug that Bell does with Wine. This is the third time. I've kept count, and I've been confused every time of why they just don't do it. It's like they have something against showing Bell hug Wine for some reason. Like the first time was the scene immediately after Hestia Familia rescues Wine from being stoned by the citizens who spotted her. Bell was supposed to like hug her then, and then there's the other points like just before Hestia Familia has the journey down into the dungeon to take Wine to the Xenos village, where Bell is supposed to hug Wine, and the text actually makes sure to include that Bell like hugs even the wing on Wine. And here, Belle is yet again supposed to hug Wine, like from touching her hand that's on his shoulder to actually bringing her more dragon-esque face to his chest. Maybe that will look awkward due to how big Wine is at the moment, but it's just really weird how 3 times Belle is supposed to hug Wine in the light novel, and they don't adapt it a single time in the anime. And I think the hug would have been more effective than that random light that just came out of nowhere. Like, I get it's supposed to symbolize like Wine's inner turmoil trying to get out of that frenzy, but it's just really weird how that light just comes from nowhere. And it's not just the hunters like Dix and Gran and even Fells that are like shocked by what's happening, but even some of the monsters that are fighting amongst each other like stop and look at that moment with Belle hugging Wine. And then we get that really cool moment where Belle is able to actually sever the spearhead off of Dix's cursed spear. And it's especially touching given that Belle does that immediately after Dix asks, what is the value in saving these monsters? And when Belle says that just Zenos asking for help is more than enough, in the light novel it actually shows Leto having tears in his eyes, and even Gross, his eyes widen, even though they're still under the influence of Dix's curse, they get those reactions from them. And the anime does show this shot of Leto while Belle is saying this. What the weird thing is, even though they do bring attention to Leto, they don't adapt the part where there's tears in Leto's eyes when he hears that. So I don't know what the point was in showing Leto in that frame and not doing that. And then we're able to see that Leto is able to power through the curse and then regain some of his sanity, and it adds on to this theme that Dix introduces where his strong desire to be a sadist and then inflict pain on these monsters, his desire to do that overrode that influence of his cursed blood. And then in that same kind of way, Leto's desire to help Belle overrode some of that curse that's trying to take control of his mind and be in that frenzy. And also in a way, Belle's fears on the monster that Wine was becoming, those fears were overrode by Belle's desire to help her, to save her. But the highlight of this episode, especially when it comes to just animation, is definitely the tag teaming that's happening between Belle and Leto going against Dix. Very much my favorite part of the episode, and it's the first time I can say through watching all these episodes of season 3, the first time I was truly excited to be watching the anime. The first time, man, they actually made this look good. I'm excited. It looks really cool with the tag teaming, and then the way they incorporated Belle charging as an Argonaut, and then him eventually punching Dix in the chest into such a huge blow. And I want to explain some of the stuff that's happening with the Argonaut skill. Before I said, I think it's episode 3, where Belle is fighting against Leto, and I mentioned that Belle was supposed to be running at Leto, charging his Argonaut skill while he does a sneak attack on Leto's face as he punches him in the episode. But of course, I kind of complained on how they just had Belle stand there and charge the Argonaut skill, and that's part of the reason why what happens in this fight is significant, because Belle is progressing with how he uses that skill. Before, he's had to charge the skill just by staying still and charging it. And then during the episode against Leto, he was supposed to be running at him while charging the skill, because charging the Argonaut skill uses a great deal of concentration, so it's much easier to build up your concentration and focus if you're just standing still. But in this episode, he's gone from charging it standing still, charging it while running towards something. Now he's able to charge the Argonaut skill while fighting. And that's the reason why he doesn't charge it in the Hestian knife, because he's using the Hestian knife during the fight. It's kind of hard to charge a weapon while you're also using it at the same time against Dix. And he actually should still have the regular Ushiwakimaru in the light novel, sheathed with him. But using the Argonaut skill can sometimes break weapons, so he doesn't want to risk that. But of course, in the light novel, it's mentioned after that 20-second charge punch, his hand is all the bones in his hand are just broken. And of course, that's healed by Fells later, but all the bones in his hand are broken at the moment. And one other thing, I was very surprised they actually kept Gross gouging half of Gran's face. Like, they actually showed it happening. They showed it. I'm like, wow, I'm impressed about that. And Gran deserves that. Good job, Gross. You're a real one now. Now, the part where Dix throws the jewel, that's changed a tiny bit, because in the light novel, it's Leto who catches the jewel and Belle who catches Leto by the tail before, like, they fall down that hole. And here it's just switched to Belle catching it and then Leto catching Belle. So an interesting change. Not sure why they did it. Probably because it might look awkward for Belle to be catching Leto instead of the other way around, but it works. Now, I do want to say, I thought the visualization of Dix, like, manipulating Weene was a little bit weird with how much Belle they included it in the hallucination, but whatever. But basically, when Dix is cursing just like a single person, he can actually enforce those hallucinations, because he's not able to do the hallucination stuff when he's using it across a wide area. But he is able to do that if it's just against like one person. And Dix does get away here, but they should resolve his stuff by the end of next episode with how the volume works. I think they're just reordering how the events work here, so they can end the episode where they did. And then you have this scene where Ray and the other Xenos reunite with everyone, and this is why I said it was weird how Let and Fia, like, they were sent out to go get them, but they don't show up here in the anime. Like, okay, we sent these people to get you guys. Where are they? So, a weird missing detail. So now for the scene where Fells is healing Belle. Originally, like, you're like, yo, why are you guys stopping? You need to make your way up to Weene. So in the light novel, they are actually running together while Fells is healing Belle as they are running. Like, Fells is able to cast a spell while running and healing Belle. And Fells was able to catch up to Belle because Belle was not at his full, like, moving strength. He's not able to sprint as fast as he normally is because he's so injured. But then you see, after Belle gets healed, he's, like, sprinting up the stairs. In the novel, it's mentioned he's, like, skipping 8 steps at a time, and that's why Fells is going, oh, are you kidding me? And you guys might have gotten confused on why Belle's scratch on the cheek that was inflicted by that cursed weapon was able to be healed by Fells. Fells is a very powerful sage, mage, so that's why it got healed. And there's also that foreshadowing shot of Gran, who managed to slip away from the situation, holding on to that severed spearhead from Dix's spear. Now, in this scene with Hestia Familia encountering Weene, originally Mikoto uses her Yatsuno Black Crow skill to detect monsters and notices that it is indeed a weaver, and she mentions that, and they discover, like, they figure out it's Weene. And there's not much of a change with how the anime deals with it. They just kind of figure out, yeah, that's Weene immediately. So nothing too big there. The weird thing is when Weene is attacking them. So Welf and Mikoto are supposed to be, like, making, like, a type of wall to protect the rest of the Familia with their swords. Like, Welf uses his great sword and Mikoto uses her katana. They don't have those weapons with them for some reason in the anime version of events. And that doesn't make too much sense in my mind. Like, wait, they were looking for Icarus Familia's hideout and they didn't bring their weapons with them? That's just another weird oversight in my mind. And then you see in the anime, Welf and Mikoto jump out of the way, and then Lily prioritizes Hestia's health because she's a goddess. If she actually gets fatally wounded, that spell doom for the Familia. So Lily pushes her out of the way, and then poor Haru having to defend for herself, and then Belle comes out of nowhere and pushes Haruhime aside and protects her. But in the light novel, Belle, like, is supposed to be coming from the direction that Weene did because they both came from that same opening from Gnosis. And Belle actually, like, redirects a tail swipe that Weene was going to do on Haruhime. But yeah, Belle ends up protecting her, and just when they're, like, trying to get the situation under control, Belle's like, okay, I got the jewel. And then that's, of course, when you see that spear fly, Finn spear, pinning down Weene to the end of a building. And then you have that ultimate encounter between Loki Familia looking down upon Belle. And just for some added context to Loki Familia, You should know that Finn, Riveria, and Gareth were introduced as level 6, and then in the middle of Season 1's anime for the main series, it's revealed that Ai's leveled up to 6. But during this time period, at this point in the timeline, Bet, Tiona, and Tione are also level 6. They got to level 6 shortly after what happened in Sororatoria Season 1. So right now, Belle is like challenging 7 level 6s. And you have the members of Hestia Familia like kind of wonder if maybe Loki Familia had a clue as to what was going on. And you might get more details about that if you read Sororatoria Volume 10, which covers the Loki Familia perspective on this event. And I just want to read a quote from Volume 10 of the main series, which this episode is adapting, because I think it just hits really hard on what the situation is for Belle right now, like reacting to Loki Familia. Like everyone else is cheering like the citizens, because like, yes, Loki Familia is here. The strongest Familia in Arario is here to take care of this monster that just appeared out of nowhere. But here we go. Those adventurers stood as beacons of hope for the townspeople, having always admired their strength. But for Belle, they looked like the apocalypse. And that line just sinks so deep. Like normally you'd be very happy to see these people, but for Belle, the situation just got like the worst it could possibly be. Here is the strongest Familia in Arario, and they're all looking at Belle, and Belle has to make this decision. Will he side with monsters or with people? And when I say that, I mean like how humanity views monsters. Will he go with that, or will he actually go against everybody? Now this is very different from that scene in episode 2, where Belle kind of like tries to rush towards Wine without even thinking about the situation. This is very different. He is very aware of the situation. He's having a ton of time to decide what to do, and he makes that willing decision to go against Loki Familia, who is right in front of him, 7 level 6s, and all the townspeople watching him. He makes that decision to follow his heart and defend Wine. And in general, I like how the scene is adapted, but there are like a few things I'd like to change. Like in the novel, it explicitly mentions that the crowd was like cheering for Loki Familia, and it just like very gradually dies down the longer it takes for Belle to do something. Like, wait, what's going on here? Why is Belle not doing anything? And then it mentions there's this eerie silence, but in the episode you still hear this music going on. But it's just a difference of how the directing should be done. I think it was still done somewhat well here, and you really see it in how they paint Belle's expressions. And then the expression he makes at the very end of the episode is very similar to the illustration for like the very opening of chapter 10, which is what will be adapted next episode. But the one thing I thought was strange was just the pose they used for Belle was like this outstretched arms thing. In my mind, or at least how I pictured it from how the novel described it, was Belle actually like at the ready to fight. And that's like such a difference between like looking like this, like don't attack this person, into like being in this ready stance to fight, because that's a bit different. Like, please, I need to protect this person, don't attack this person, into I will fight you to protect this person. I'm willing to fight against these 7 level 6s, raise my blade against them to protect Wine behind me. And again, the exact light novel quote is extremely intense. Beads of sweat rolled down his cheeks, his breathing was ragged, and his face was pale as a ghost. He raised his black knife in a reverse grip, prepared to stand in their way. You should definitely read the novels if you have the time, guys. Definitely read them. It just hits different. And then you see Hermes being a bit upset at the situation, because this whole time, Hermes is trying to build Belle up as like the next generation hero, the next hero that Arario needs. And now it's like Belle is really throwing all of that away to protect this monster. So in general, probably the best episode of the season so far. And again, if adapted properly, every single episode after this should be a banger, because the ending of Volume 10, where we're starting with this turning point right here, is nuts. And then just like the entirety of Volume 11 is crazy. and should be extremely exciting if they do it well. But I really have my doubts, and I wish I could not be pessimistic about it, but I am, because I don't see a way to get into Volume 11 next episode, because they still have 73 pages to adapt with Volume 10, and it really wouldn't make too much sense blending together elements of the next novel in next episode, because with the way Volume 10 and 11 are structured, it doesn't make any sense to include anything from Volume 11 next episode. It would need to start with its own fresh episode. So it really does look like Volume 11 will be adapted into 4 episodes, and that's just extremely unfortunate, because again, Volume 11 is the longest novel of the 3 that we're adapting, and it's, all in all, it's going to take 4.5 episodes for Volume 10, which is a very weird way of managing the time. So we're just going to have to hope that at least that the highlights of Volume 11 will be adapted well, because we're definitely not going to get like the greatest adaptation given how much episode time we have. And again, it's me being sad at maybe just like some poor planning and scheduling with how this anime was approached from a production standpoint. Like I really think that season 2 should have just been Volume 6 and 7. A lot of people agreed that the war game arc was rushed, needed an extra episode. And then between all the stuff that was kind of skipped in the Ishtar Familia arc, that definitely could have had an extra episode. So season 2 could have just been one core, being Volume 6 and 7, and then Volume 8, which they skipped 80% of during season 2, with just those 2 episodes being like the very back of the book. They could have adapted that entire thing with the Xenos arc into a 2-core season 3, and that would have been really nice. But again, that's just not how the anime production committee thought they should handle this. Like, we should just skip scenes in the mobile game. That'll be fine. Oh well. And rant. We'll see how it goes, guys. Yeah, that's the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed what you saw. I'm curious to see what light novel readers thought about the episode. Like, I'm sure you guys enjoyed the stuff with Leto and Bella going against Dix. I wonder what you think about skipping some of that stuff. That initial fight between the bull Xenos and Aisha and Osvi, that being just moved to the mobile game. I'm curious in how anime onlys feel about what's happening in the anime right now, like Belle going against defying Loki Familia, 7 level 6s, staring them down, ready to fight. I'll see you guys next week. Hopefully my throat is better. And if you want to see more DanMachi content, go ahead, like the video, sub to the channel, follow me on Twitter, and join the Discord. And as always, continue enjoying your time adventuring Mario and the dungeon. This is Lauren, your guild advisor, signing out. 渦を巻く雨雲から差し込んだ